screen and hope that you can see that okay. Yep, great, cool. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the Wurundjeri country in Brunswick in Melbourne, and to acknowledge our elders past, present and emerging, particularly in these times as the work we do is so shifting beneath our feet and people are really looking to lean on Indigenous knowledge and wisdom. I'd also like to say thanks to Chris and TDS for inviting me to join you tonight. I'm a recovering marketing and advertising creative, so I don't have an academic background at all. But really, I just love good ideas, and I really love connecting people and human potential for the things that matter most to us. So why a coalition of everyone? I first came across the ideas of people's assemblies and citizens' assemblies around the end of 2018. And as I started to understand what they were, I was wondering why they weren't everywhere. It just seemed like these seem like very pragmatic tools to renew democracy through. And I suppose we're still on this journey to spread collaborative decision-making tools, which is my shorthand version of summarizing what these can do through deep democracy practices. And really our mission is to normalize them into everyday life, just these aren't things we need to label or call out anymore. It's actually, this is just how we do life better with better democracy. So the coalition of everyone is a little bit like, is an idea that's a little bit like it says what it is on the tin. However, hopefully it's a whole lot more, as we have been developing and testing and iterating and learning through the past couple of years of developing a framework with people. And so if I'm on a PDF, so I can't click through very quickly, not quite so beautifully, but what we're here to do is to try and build democratic culture for community, citizen and policy-led change. And I suppose why deliberative democracy matters, the thinking that we're currently with is that when diverse groups of people come together through their differences to come up with the best solutions possible, informed by the most rigorous thinking, we not only innovate, we cut through paths or create new paths that transcend the boundaries of party or age or income. So it's about bringing people together and building communities rather than isolated ideological silos. So shifting out of ideology and moving into collaboration, because for generations we've been championing competition over and individualism. And we need to reboot this idea of collaboration, starting with our political systems, as without better systems, we're ill-equipped to face the future and what's happening in the world and in Australia. So this is why we're building deliberative and political tools to provide multi-pronged solutions for these challenges that we're facing. What does it look like? Our vision is a world where people are welcome to engage actively with political and economic systems, whether in small-scale community budgeting decisions or large-scale randomly selected assemblies tasked with setting policy. As Chris has said, the OECD is calling it the deliberative wave, which I think is a great way to kind of sense the enthusiasm behind the movement. And it's really gaining momentum. There's a whole lot of people all stepping into this space going, how do we do this? Which is really exciting. There's many people working and organisations already working at state and federal and global levels. There's the New Democracy Foundation in Sydney, obviously, who do amazing work. All to bring about changes in how we do democracy better. At CO, we're part of the movement, but I suppose we're focusing on a complementary bottom-up approach that we think we can go hand in hand with the top-down approach. And it's what someone I spoke to, Rob Petkin from the Open Food Network, was talking about, a middle-out approach. So we can't do just top-down and we can't do just bottom-up. We need to actually be kind of combining the two and working together for a middle out approach and really like a contagious cure to the democratic disconnect. So we're building assemblies in schools and communities and with councils and working with communities to navigate different visions of the future and actively reaching out to communities most affected by the transition to a regenerative future. I'll try and do this one quite quickly. This is hot off the press, our strategy that hasn't been shared very far. Last year, through most of us being in Melbourne, although we have people in the collab from all over Australia, we went into a bit of a de-accelerator process to tighten up our strategy and vision and purpose. So you guys are seeing this before anyone else really. So our vision is a future where collective wisdom is celebrated in service of a healthy and equitable planet. And our purpose in service of this vision is to ignite new possibilities for democracy and enabling people to reimagine our role in democracy and create the systems we need. To achieve this, we have 3 aims, which is to encourage people to collaborate on the decisions that matter to them. By doing this, we're building also a groundswell for deliberative democracy as a norm, and then to work together with generosity and care. We have spent a couple of years developing a framework to move from the democratic disconnect and to try and upgrade democracy, if you will. So at one end of this is for community-led change, and we call it a people's assembly, but it could be a common room, it could be just an assembly. It's just it can be an open table technology. It can be whatever you want to call it. It's just bringing people together at a community level. So these workshops are for decision making and radical collaboration, and to bring people together for deliberative, participatory ways across communities, business, council, civil society, and government. So they're curated events. And the goal of these types of assemblies is to enable exponential growth of new initiatives and network building, accelerating a just transition. So we're quite focusing on pinpointing our work towards a just transition and building capacity for people to be more involved in policy and process. At the other end of the framework is a policy-led change. And in the center of the framework, what came from last year is actually visioning assemblies. And one of these projects was working with Chris in how we can help encourage futures literacy and really ignite imagination so that we can start to see where we're trying to get to, rather than business as usual. This is what it's always been. We're going to snap back. We need to bounce beyond. And the visioning tools that have been developed for that, we also want to share these everywhere. For a multi-generational approach to change, we have frameworks that are adapted for youth assemblies and for student assemblies. So for both school-age children and university students. We held, before the lockdown, we held quite a few mock citizens assemblies. Actually, we did quite a few online as well. And this is really that learned experience to understand how they work, was to kind of go, well, here's how it runs. So these weren't to affect policy. It was more that people can experience what a citizen assembly is like, what critical non-biased thinking feels like, how to deliberate and be an active listener as well, to walk away with ideas that then can help the advocacy, I suppose. And then of course, citizens assemblies. So there's a lot of different people doing amazing things. And I think what I hear is that there's a lot of importance on protecting the legitimacy of citizen assemblies at a government level, but then also how these can be opened up at community level without taking legitimacy from the federal, state level citizens assemblies. So as a kind of a spectrum, this is the framework we've been working on. A couple of example events that we held last year. I'll actually dive into this was in May last year, working with Beyond Zero Emissions and Nina to hold a People's Assembly with the Hunter Valley residents to discuss future-proofing jobs on the land for 2030. And this was to collect information and ideas on what people could do beyond to create jobs, decarbonised jobs. And the data then fed into the 1 million jobs report that they've written. That was shifting into online mode at the beginning of going, oh, how does Zoom work? Which was a lot of fun. And I think everyone involved said it was a bit like a great big hug afterwards. And it was quite emotional to be connecting with people about things that local people felt really important. And we also realized that actually early on that the only way it was going to work was having local facilitators too. So we were trying to step back and really let local people facilitate and decide and just sort of go, here's some tools if you don't already have access to them. So all up, we've held about 30 events with approximately 800 participants since our pilot in October 2019. And this was the beginning of the Zoom ones. And then through a conversation that I started in, I think, March, which was, hang on, this is about stories. I started to understand it's the storytelling that is so important in how we help influence change. And I reached out to Chris and some other amazing people around the country and said, how do we do this? And we started an 18 or 19 week weekly session called New Narratives. And from that was birthed this project called the Future Now Project, which is it's a website, it's a platform, it's an educational toolkit and a visioning story bank. And it's really aimed at igniting imagination and building hope and action, and to tell the other story that is the alternative. It's sort of a soft launch that launched with Dumbo Feather in August. And on the website as well, there's some experiential visioning tools that you can use for individuals at the moment. And we're just starting to finally do it with community groups too, because we think everybody deserves a chance to have that lived experience of what their vision for a better world looks and feels like and smells like and tastes like and sounds like, and how it works, so that we can start to figure out how to get there. And to share those stories out further as well, so that others can see it and be inspired by it too. Another project that started at the end of last year, I'm very heavily involved with at the moment, which tickles me pink, literally, I didn't realize that until then, is Regen Melbourne. So this came from a conversation after Kate Raworth, who is the donut economics renegade economist, did a talk at the Small Giants Academy in June, I think, or July. And I put my hand up saying, how do we bring this here? This is amazing. And so a bunch of us sort of have got together. So there's Kai from Small Giants and Sean from Circular Economy Victoria, working with the City of Melbourne and the Lord Mayor's Charitable Foundation to bring this to Melbourne. And so in February last month, we held 5 community workshops exploring the donut for a generative future for Melbourne. So Regen Melbourne is a network of organisations and individuals exploring a bigger idea, where the donut is a big idea, it's enormous, but it's a whole within a bigger whole in a way. So the regenerative future is our bigger, I suppose, idea, and then how we use these, explore different economic models for a post-COVID Melbourne too. So it's got, the network has been absolutely extraordinary. We've got about 500 members since, I think, November, when it officially started. The Slack channel's got a couple of 100 people on it. It's quite active. We must have had about 300 participants in the community workshops in February. And the first project is basically writing an insights report. And so we're in this huge deep distillation process at the moment, synthesizing the insights from the workshops. And this will be presented at Melbourne Knowledge Week in April, with Kate hopefully there as well. So there's a whole lot of really exciting stuff happening there. And there's other cities around Australia now also going, oh, how do we do that? And it's linked in with the Donut International Working Group, the Deal platform. And I think why I'm talking about it a lot is because it's something really powerful to do the work through. And actually that without deep democracy and facilitated, safe, protected environments, this doesn't work. But also, how do we bring in unheard voices? And does sortition help ensure that we're not leaving anybody behind as we try and shift into rebooting our economic systems? Oh, and of course, actually, the amazing PhD student at UTS has done all the scribing, Kieran Kashiap, so massive shout outs to him. So what role do comms play in all of this? I suppose for me, in the end, I wouldn't know actually how to answer that exactly, but I feel like we know the why, we know a what and a how. There's a whole lot of amazing stuff happening. And as we're on this journey together to create a better world, we even occasionally catch glimpses of it when we open our imaginations up. It's how do we do that? How do we spread these tools everywhere? Is I think the role of comms. It's like we need to be telling the stories to get the word out there and make it accessible and inclusive, and less about early adopters jumping onto new exciting ideas, and more about, hey, this is for everyone, and to normalize deliberative practices. And the last piece for me is to plug a couple of things. We've got an event on next Wednesday morning that we'd love to invite you to for the Future Now project, which is our first community visioning event. That will be partnered with the NGV Design Week. I'll put a link in to that. We'd love to have you there and to publish more voices onto the platform too. We're always looking for interested people to help the coalition of everyone build, grow, and spread more into other parts of Australia as well, outside of Victoria, where we're accidentally heavily based. I'm actually on the lookout for some comms people, so if anybody's really excited by this and wants to help, DM me. And then lastly, Regen Melbourne, as the donut is spreading, feel free to contact me if that's something you're interested in too, because there's lots of people all going, and it's really gaining a lot of momentum. So that's it for me, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Willow.